One constant of the greatest and most well-respected Batman comics is the character the artists manage to give the setting. Sale, Boland, McKean all manage to make Gotham and the places within it seem almost alive, separate characters of their own. Batman Ego differs from that, not in artistic merit, but in the purpose of the art and what it's emphasizing. In the other stories, we learn a lot about Batman through his interactions with the world around him. In Ego, we learn about Batman through Batman. That is the reason the art is so stripped back, much like the famous Art Deco style of Batman the Animated Series. It is so all the attention is focused on Bruce and Batman. The backgrounds and even Gotham itself is void-like because he is trapped in the void of his own mind. Gotham is just an extension of that prison. It used to be the city full of life he was fighting for. Now, he just seems to be fighting because he can't do anything else. The live vibrancy of the city has faded away from Batman's vision. He no longer really knows what he's fighting for. The choice to use a font that more closely resembles handwriting reinforces the idea that these are Bruce's private thoughts, almost like they are snippets torn from a diary. This is the most psychologically driven storyline Batman comics have ever given us, and in choosing to centre its story this way, it manages to explore and reinforce so many of the most important themes related to this character.
I can only beg your forgiveness and pray you'll hear me somehow. Someplace where a warm hand waits for mine.
One of the most harrowing scenes in the comic comes near the beginning. After a long chase, Batman is injured but still focused on the job, thinking this is just going to be another night of bringing in a criminal. Even when he sees the man try to throw himself off a bridge, he still doesn't consider it anything more, until he hears these desperate words.
Safe! You idiot. Who do you think you're dealing with? How many times has he been caught? You morons always let him escape. He wanted me to know that when he gets out, he'll be looking for me and my family to show his appreciation, you self-righteous nut. You used me in your little game of cops and robbers, but the Joker will never get his hands on any of my family. I couldn't bear the thought of my wife and daughter at the hands of that maniac. So I killed them myself. I'll see you in hell, you masked lunatic!
We were introduced to Batman meditating on why he feels like his crusade is so fruitless, but he never actually manages to put his finger on why. Until this villain, whose life he inadvertently helped in danger, tells him straight to his face. It's not as simple as just putting the Joker away. It's not as simple as just getting out of the criminal life. It seeps into everything. It taints all that it touches, even Batman himself. So from guilt, tragedy, and a low-level crook's desperation, Batman was born. And also through this, did Bruce decide to let him go. But Batman will not be gotten rid of so easily.
I'm afraid that when I walk through those asylum gates, when I walk into Arkham and the doors close behind me, it'll be just like coming home.
One other thing that a lot of the greatest Batman works have in common that many mainstream iterations neglect is that Batman is not a mentally well character. It's not as simple as him being grief-stricken and unable to move past the deaths of his parents. Much of what he does is pathological in nature. The lengths to which he goes can be written as a positive expression of his determination and willpower, but looking at it from a different angle, it can be seen as brutally self-destructive. Like he's punishing himself. This is his penance for simply surviving. And when it comes to diagnosing Batman, while many works have delved into his psyche, Ego is the only comic that gives it to us from the mouth of the Psyche itself. Ego proposes the idea that this aspect of Bruce was already present within him even before the deaths of his parents. This is psychologically backed up in our world, as we know that many personality disorders can lie dormant in people and a traumatic incident can bring them forth. One of the reasons why many people may react differently to the same trauma. A lot of stories choose to explore the idea of Batman reaching his breaking point as a vigilante and giving up hope, though many of those stories choose to harden the character, slowly remove his humanity until nothing but a vicious shell is left. And while that does fulfill the long-tested tale of becoming the thing you fight, and explores vigilantism in a philosophical, psychological and moral sense, you could slot many heroes from many stories throughout human history into the position of having lost all hope and hardened themselves to the point where they transcend to villainy. If you look below the surface, this does very little when it comes to exploring the character of Batman specifically. Ego, however, is an entirely unique tale of Bruce Wayne reaching his breaking point in the sense that he does not harden, he actually breaks. The opening pages tell us in Batman's own words how physically and emotionally vulnerable he feels. This one doesn't deal in vague notions of becoming too hard or being too far gone. Ego deals with genuine, if unofficially diagnosed mental illness, and in doing so, gives us perhaps the fullest picture of who Batman is that we have ever gotten in any comic before or since. Not only that, but through this lens, the comic is able to explore many iconic Batman themes.
Freaks like this clown used to play way out on the fringe, but once you showed up...
Creating one's own villains or enemies is nothing new in literature. It dates back to the old tales of self-fulfilling prophecies that managed to make their way into the myths of most cultures. The Batman comics' use of it, however, can be seen as a microcosm for how modern society and systems can create the monsters they're trying to fight. That the war against crime can never be won, because as the police find more ways to catch the criminals find new ways of not getting caught. The legal system creates new laws to protect us, but in turn just creates more ways for the dishonest, the self-serving, and yes, the desperate, to get around them. As Batman started his one-man war on crime, he almost created a challenge. Gotham changed. And the argument is that Batman is the one who changed it. If that is true, can he be in some way held responsible for the lives that have been lost as a result?
If I allow myself to go down into that place, I'll never come back.
An iconic and often debated element to Batman's character is his commitment to not killing. Many arguments against the no-killing rule simply confine it to the idea that the no-killing rule itself is flawed. I say, yes, exactly. What these arguments fail to take into consideration is why he would be committed to this so much that he couldn't bring himself to kill the man who murdered his own son. Ego shows us that Batman feels as though he must abide by this rule lest he go down into that place, the recesses of his mind, let out the monster lurking within, and never come back.
I am the thing that keeps you up at night, the evil that haunts every dark corner of your mind. I will never rest, and neither will you.
The dual nature of Bruce and Batman has been a part of his story since his inception. First, it merely existed as a practical device to separate Bruce's vigilante activity from his life, because he couldn't be Batman all the time. There had to be a man underneath. But over the years, this has grown into a key aspect of the character. Him splitting himself in two, hiding who he truly is and letting it out only when the mask goes on. One interpretation is that Bruce Wayne is the true mask and Batman is the true man. Ego interprets things a little differently. To do this, it brings both sides of the character together on panel to talk to each other. It takes inspiration from the Christmas Carol and its presentation of this. Bruce questions whether this is a spectre here to tell him the truth he needs to hear, or if this is a meaningless manifestation his brain has conjured up. This question is answered when the spectre explodes in rage at Bruce, reiterating all the times when he has needed his strength. When confronted with the spectre, or the id, Bruce, the ego, comes to the conclusion that yes, he is talking to himself, but it is a part of himself he was ready to throw away but still needs. In trying to repress this aspect of himself, he will only deteriorate mentally even more. Instead of ignoring it, he must confront it and accept it. He must merge these two aspects to make himself whole again. Ego manages to seamlessly incorporate so many aspects of Batman's psychology into one short story that in its use of one character in whose head most of the story takes place, paired with the mental torment, makes it seem almost like an Edgar Allan Poe tale, though a Poe tale never has a happy ending. Bruce, resolving to not end up like Harvey, who shook responsibility onto a manifestation of his subconscious, chooses to embrace who he is, good and bad. Use the darker aspects of himself to protect the innocent and those he loves, while taking on the burden of keeping that darkness in check. Ego, like all the great Batman stories, dark, psychologically driven, never holding back when it comes to portraying the ugliness of the world, but ultimately being a hopeful tale of the flawed and the broken, putting themselves back together and trying to do what's right. Happy Halloween, everyone. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you to everyone who voted. I was so sure that Serious House on Serious Earth was a shoo-in for the winner there, but yeah, I'm really glad that this one won, because the last video essays that I did for Halloween, I always knew Long Halloween was a masterpiece, and I always thought that Dark Victory was completely underrated and deserved more attention. But even though I always knew Ego was great, it was one that was never really on my radar. It was one of those ones that I'd read, thought, oh, that was pretty good, and then promptly forgot about. But in revisiting it and thinking about it in this way, yeah, it's a masterwork. It really is. And yeah, just doing these video essays has got me to think so much harder about some works that I had previously just read, enjoyed, and then put on the shelf. So I am so glad that Batman Ego won. And also, I now understand like a little bit more why people were saying that the Matt Reeves Batman was taking a lot of influence from this, because I originally just remembered that being, well, Batman Ego is all about the duality of Batman and Bruce Wayne, and there was really no Bruce Wayne here in the movie, so I didn't really get why people were making that comparison and why Matt Reeves himself said he took influence, but I get it now. I really get it. The whole psychological aspect of it, yet that is so Ego. So yes, it's amazing. And I just want to do a couple of quick shout outs for the music and the voice work. The opening and closing melody was called Melancholia by Ryan Creep. I have left a link in the description. The one for the Born from Tragedy section was Cableman87, and he just composed this for Mr. Freeze. And not to say that the theme for Mr. Freeze in Batman the Animated Series wasn't amazing, but this one, yeah, it was just so soft. It made me think of ice. It was very melancholic, tragic. Yeah, it was beautiful. So yeah, definitely give those two a listen, because they're really, really good. And for the voice work, I'd like to thank my friend Aiden, who did the voice of Buster. That was a great performance. Thank you very much, Aiden. And in the Diagnosing Batman section, I took the line from Nello Angelo, I hope that's how you pronounce it. He did a audio drama of Serious House on Serious Earth, which is what that line is from. And I've heard several audio dramas of Serious House on Serious Earth, but I think his is the best. So again, I've put a link in the description. Please check him out. It's amazing. And just that line, that's one of the reasons I actually wanted Serious House on Serious Earth to win, because just that is one of my favorite Batman lines ever. Like, when he just says, I'm afraid that when I walk into Arkham and the doors close behind me, it'll feel like coming home. That is just a line that I've never forgot ever since reading that. I love it. So I'll stop rambling on now, and I'd like to apologise if this one is a little shorter than the other ones, but I unfortunately caught COVID. Yeah, over 2 years of having avoided it, I finally got it, and oh god, the coughs I had to edit out of that recording, you wouldn't believe. So, happy Halloween, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the essay, and thanks again for listening.